Yeah.
Okay, that's recording.
Okay. It's got HDMI as well.
That might be good. I got.
HDMI on this side.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay. Let's try it. That one's a display. You've got USB-C. No.
I'll try that there.
Got all kinds of cords. Ours does, you sir. We.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Well, it's with this, which has the FQB.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's cool.
What you guys end up doing it last night?
Yeah, I passed out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
C5 Simmons, lulled you to sleep?
Yeah, 6 hours of that, and then I Sunday, getting up early, I was so got up early, then I worked out this morning.
It's cool, man. I hope, yeah. That'd be a bad day. Yeah, but, yeah.
Is it all recording?
Good. Sweet.
Need anything else? You have audio?
There's no lighter in there. Maybe just with my quick slide or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Sweet.
Here goes, sir. Yeah, let's, if you wouldn't mind. Maybe a small group today, but
That's all
the
good.
good thing is we're filming, so it'll be
We don't mind.
on our YouTube channel.
We're not offended.
Ah.
Just make you guys.
What's that?
Make you guys do this.
Hey, man.
What'd you think of old Joe Dombrowski or whatever yesterday?
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah, he's been doing that for forever.
Really?
Yeah, I had a sim with him this morning, so he reminds us every time, like it's your first time, he talks to you every time. I've been doing this for 14, he gave me his whole life story again today, so.
That's cool.
Been over there for 14 years.
I was telling, he kind of like on the intercom, he kind of sounds like Joe Biden. So I was like, I felt sometimes like it was Joe Biden talking to me. He's like, hey, it's your president. Like, switch.
This is your president's guy.
Yeah.
You guys end up able to print the cards, the new cards?
Yeah, here.
I'll put it in Marriott quality.
Yeah.
Looks like it's just us.
Sweet.
Small group.
Yesterday. It's gonna be super informal.
Yeah.
Again, just informative for you guys. You guys can fall asleep and I'm calling you. But I will caveat this. This is a little bit towards the end tailored towards the bomber aspects.
Okay.
But I did talk to a couple bros, if you will, on the 418th, which is airlift test on some of their programs that's going on. So at least to give you a little bit of flavor of what the follow on might look like. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. So here's TPS. You can tell this is an outdated photo just because there's grass that's actually green over there. So this is a lot better than it it might be a little run down. But anyways, the NF 104, supposedly Chuck Yeager flew that one. But yeah, it's on a stick. Here's the mission. So premier institution for flight test, education, training, and research. And then our mission is just to produce highly adaptive, critical thinking flight test professionals to lead and conduct a full spectrum of test and evaluation for weapons system. So this is kind of where flight testers fit in. We take highly experienced aviators and engineers, and they're in between that and then weapons system acquisition. If you think of the office space, I'm a people person. I talk to the engineers. It's kind of what the TPS students do later on. Yep, so minimal resources, that is definitely true. Highly skilled, that's always debatable, but complex efforts and basically communicate difficult concepts clearly to decision makers is the big thing there. Flight testing, the miracles is, yes, that is true. Here's a brief history. I just put this in there just to show that, hey, this is a pretty old school. Might not have been called TPS back in 1944, but it definitely was the first, if you will, test pilot school class. And then kind of the big highlights, if you will, on stuff that's been added to the program. So we do have, it was just pilots, we do have FTEs, so flight test engineers, we do have flight test navigators, and then 2011 was the first RPA to go through as well. So we definitely, I think that's one good thing about TPS is they're not afraid of changing and updating stuff, which is good. And so this kind of shows some of that. Yep, so graduate and class statistics. This is probably a little bit light on the numbers of total graduates, but it's pretty close, probably within about 23, if you will. Yep, 112 general officers, 65 astronauts, which is pretty cool. And then there are civilians that go through. So about every year, there's, I think, 2 typically, just government civilians that go through and our TPS grads. But you probably recognize quite a few people on there, notably Chuck Yeager there, right in the center there. Yep, so it's 48 weeks, so it's a long program. It's about 11 months. You do come out with a degree, a master's degree in flight test engineering. We have 2 classes per year, a total of 24 students per class. Alpha class starts in January and graduates the following December, and then the Bravo class starts in July and ends in June. There's 4 courses, so whether you go through as a pilot or an MTE, your syllabus is slightly different, but they're pretty much the same. It's really just the seat you sit in for flying, and there's a couple different sorties, but they're very similar. As far as pilots, this is what you guys care about. You got to have less than 9 years and 6 months from when you start. You need to have a BS, this is the big one, a BS in engineering, math, physics, and a GPA greater than 3.0. As far as experience, 750 hours of IP time or greater than 1,000 hours total time, and then a year of AC. I will say that this is flexible, so it's not a hard line at 9.5 years or the time, especially nowadays with limited resources. So I would ask if you're interested and you don't meet those criteria to still apply. The waiver authority exists within the application process, and the waiver is simply an MFR saying, hey, I know these are the requirements, but I still think I would do a good job, essentially. Yep, so this is the overview. It's a lot of academics and a lot of flying. It's a very busy year, 12-hour days, I would say, for the most part, sometimes more for the 48 weeks there. You do get 2,500 hours of time, if you will, classes, sim, labs, flights, academics. There's 13 courses, and you have 21 academic exams. So 19 individual exams and then 2 comprehensive exams towards the end. So really, for the first semester, so for the first 5 to 6 months, there's literally a test a week. And they try to cram basics of a course within 1 week. So you have a test on a Friday after you've covered that entire course. Orals, again, designed to encompass everything you've learned and just to make sure you're ready before you go out. These guys have done their comp writtens, which is a nice to have already gotten that done, and they got their orals coming up. They're no joke. They're pretty intense there. A lot of reports. program's designed so that you can communicate what you find in the field. So you're going to do a lot of that within the course just to make sure you're good at it. And then flying, so you got 85 flights, airborne labs, polyvals. Polyvals meaning it's similar to what we're doing here with the C5. You're going to go out and get one sortie in a plane, apply what you've learned to it, and kind of see what makes it fly the way it does, and kind of form an opinion on what's good and what's bad about it. And then TMPs, test management projects, which we'll get into a little bit later on. And then 20-ish types. It varies every semester on what we can actually get in the curriculum. And then there's 3 check rides over the 3 major phases that we'll cover. It's a good point to talk about this now. The airborne labs, I think, is pretty neat. With the academics, you'll go through and you'll learn concepts. And then a lot of the rides are designed to show you those concepts within flight. So there's quite a few flights that piggyback onto that, and being able to apply and see that in the air is pretty unique to DPS. Yep, rigorous student selection process. So you put your application in, and then you'll go through what's called CCEP, which is where they, as pilots, you'll fly out or drive down to Edwards, and you'll have a flight in a C-12, a T-38, and gliders, just to see how well you fly, and basically fly some practice flight test techniques to see, again, what kind of hands you have, and then also your ability to think and fly an aircraft you may have never flown before. You do get a Master of Science in Flight Test Engineering, so more degrees. And then also on staff, there's actually a decent amount of PhD students, or not students, excuse me, graduates. So MIT, AFIT, Virginia Tech is what we've had in the past. We just had a Carnegie Mellon guy show up. And then there's roughly 2 to 3 a year that start a PhD program and or come back from a PhD program. So there's a lot of academic opportunities following TPS. Test management projects, it's kind of a mini test program. You'll go out there and actually test new things. So it's a cheap way to get data because they know that TPS loves to utilize real world projects. So you'll get a cradle to grave like they talk about, which is actually pretty rare because most programs span years. This spans a few months, but you get to plan it, you get to fly it, and then you get to report on it. We'll get into some of the ones that have occurred in the past here, and then these guys can obviously talk about what they worked on just recently. We already talked about the labs as far as the flying events and then the qual-eval stuff. 3 big blocks throughout TPS: flight sciences, mission systems, and test foundations. Flight sciences being the basics like performance, stability derivatives, if you will, of an airplane. Mission systems, the systems that you can strap onto an airplane. And then test foundations is really how you conduct tests. So that's throughout the entire program. Yep, it's constantly being updated, which is the cool thing about TPS, I think, to keep it current. So these things are always changing. These are the curriculum aircraft, so the majority of the flying will be done in these 3 different aircraft, so F-16, T-38, C-12. But you will get the opportunity to fly all of these. Yeah, these are pretty regular, actually, but there's a ton other that come out depending on the season there. In F-16, so you get some sorties when it gets fixed in the in F-16. So it's an F-16 that was built specifically for this, so it's not a off-the-line F-16 that they converted. So it's literally a one-of-a-kind asset. They got a bunch of different computers in there to basically fly like, or have the ability to fly like any other airplane as long as it's within its envelope, which the envelope for an F-16 is pretty big. And then the Learjet is very similar. It's just its envelope is a little bit smaller, so it can't mimic, if you will, a lot of the stuff that an F-16 can. Again, more eye candy, but again, this is current. So this is, you guys have flown this already, right? Yep. DC-3, P-51, these guys have already flown that. Your performance check ride is in this, the HU-16. So the first time you ever fly this is on one of your check rides. Extra 300, buff is going on this year too. I don't know about C-17, that should happen, but it hasn't happened yet. T-33, and then now that we're done kind of with COVID, some guys are getting to fly the F-18. And then the T6 is pretty regular as well. Test management projects. So end-to-end, again, real-world flight test opportunities. There's 4 projects per class, so roughly 5 to 6 students per project. And it's peer-reviewed and published as far as what they find within the report. Yep, customer provides research concept to be flight tested and funding for it. And TPS provides all of this stuff. So basically all resources and manpower to test it. Here is what, so this brief is a few months old, but these are what he had in his class. So I'll let you kind of soak it up for a little bit. But actually some pretty unique things that people get to test. And again, this was all done within about 6 months, probably, maybe 7 months if you count a lot of the planning. You can read that for a few seconds. We can obviously come back later on. And then, would you work on chaos?
Epsilon. So we both did Epsilon. So we essentially train AI agents in a simulation, and then the Vista aircraft that we
Learjet.
So the Learjet, the VSS Learjet that we essentially just a basic explanation. We can talk about it later if you guys want. We put that agent in the Learjet and had the agent fly the Learjet with us on board. So we engage the agent and be like, hey, do this, like climb 1,000 feet, and then the agent would essentially try to climb 1,000 feet and see if we could do that. And then we, at the end, we did some rejoins with like an F-16. So that was cool. But yeah, if you guys want to know more, we're going to be, you guys can talk to us about it.
And the AI agent was made by a PhD on staff at TPS.
Yep.
So a lot of smart people. Yep. Again, some fancy words to say that we take some awesome aviators, make them better, educate future leaders in the acquisitions world, if you will. Don't know who you're going to help out. It could be your bros that are in the squadron now, or it could be C5 is old, the B1 is old. It could be your kids, or for instance, your kids 10 to 15 years down the road. So this again was made a few months ago. The timeline is still applicable, and then if you're interested with whatever year, you just add 1 to the year, and it's pretty regimented as far as the timing there. So applications are due here in a couple months. They announce the CCEP, so the people that make the first cut, if you will, around the November timeframe. Excuse me, it's actually within a month or two. It's more like the August timeframe. And then they'll actually bring them out late September, early October, and then the actual results, board results, are anywhere from the end of November. I've seen it all the way to the beginning of January timeframe for the following summer to go out. So it's a lengthy process, fairly in-depth again application process, but it doesn't change too much from year to year. So if you do it a couple years, you can just copy paste and insert new stuff there. Yeah, 419th is the bomber, so again, where my flavor comes in.
How many people do you guys normally bring out? And then how many, you said 24 make it per class? How many?
Yeah, so the typical class layout is about 12 pilots and 12 engineers.
Okay.
And out of the 12, so 12 pilots per class, so roughly 24 pilots a year. And then I've heard anywhere, I don't know for sure, 20 to 30% on top of that is what they bring out for the actual flying interview portion. So insert 418th where it says 419th and put a KC-135, a C-17, and a KC-46 in this formation, and that's where you guys will go. There are some opportunities to potentially do C-130 testing for AMC aircraft. So that's the 413th down at Eglin. But KC-135 testing, which they don't have a whole lot at Edwards, C-17, and then a lot of KC-46 stuff is going on at Edwards. So you'll likely go there, like 99% chance of you going there, just like there's a 99% chance of bomber guys going to the bomber test squadron. But after that, there are a lot of opportunities to do a lot of other things. So TPS instructor like myself is one if you want to do that. And then Eglin testing as well is another thing for AMC guys to go down and do. PhD, there's a lot of programs to get PhDs if you want to do some academic stuff. And there's a lot of opportunities for leadership as well, because there's a small pool of officers, if you will, that go this pipeline, and we still have a lot of squadrons that need want to be a squadron commander, TPS is a good way of doing that as well. Just be instead of an operational squadron, or just be a APC squadron. Day in the life, this is pretty normal for a test pilot. So meetings, always meetings, reports, test plans, safety plan writing. So a lot of writing, conveying, test stuff before you actually apply it. Reviewing test procedures, and then obviously the flux of scheduling. And then the standard stuff that you have in a flying squadron. So standing eval training, flight commander, SOF, OPSU, top 3, whatever you call it in your community, that's fairly normal. Except there's only 5 to 10 pilots in the squadron instead of the normal 20 to 30. So you'll definitely need all of those at one point if you're in a squadron. But it's a lot easier because there's not as many people. Or flying. Again, this is tailored to the B1/bomber, but that is a KC-46. So as far as the opportunities, I did reach out to some 418th guys, and right now they're doing C-17 control laws. So they're modifying the control laws that's already in the aircraft to make it fly better. The KC-46 has been going on for the past couple of years, and it's still going on, and will still go on for a while. So there's good opportunities to fly that. They still are getting receiver certifications, and then they're also updating, surprise, the remote vision system to make it better. / work. So that's going to have more testing. As far as dual quals, that is pretty standard in AFMC. So expect to be dual qual fairly soon after TPS. So a lot of dudes are dual qualifying the 135, the KC-46, or the KC-46 and the C-17, or the C-17 and the KC-46, or any combo with the C-12 as well. C-12 is a lot more reliable than a lot of the other aircraft that are out there, just because the other aircraft have a lot of instrumentation and a lot of one-of-a-kind test things on it. C-12s are pretty standard, so it's a lot easier to fly the C-12 to go hours. Yeah, this is what the B1 did. You guys probably don't care, but needless to say, there's a lot of tests to do in the 418th. Testing and I would need time for that one. There's my contact info. You already have it, Ryan. If anybody wants it, feel free to pass it out. And then there's my email address. I'm the only one at Edwards, so again, feel free to hit me up. But any questions?
Yeah, so when you guys are testing all these different airplanes, you guys get to land, or is it always going to be somebody, and you just doing the stuff in the MOA, like when you get to fly the? You actually get to land and take off?
I've landed every single plane. So you're not going to go by yourself. You're going to have an idea. But take off, land. I don't know if on the AKC, which is very strange.
But that's it. Yeah, the other one, yeah, that's cool.
A surreal experience for me was the helicopters at Navy. I'm fixing through.
Yeah.
I had the R-44. We got to Navy and we fly. I think it's called an Airbus. I forget the actual. I think it's a UH 72, 71. It's a pretty cool helicopter, and the dude's he's a Navy instructor, test pilot, but he's like let me land like in the trees and everything. Like there's trees right there. I don't trust myself, but he's like cool with it. So some crazy. Every person goes through TPS has a couple of experiences like that, but at the same time they're trying to broaden your experience so that you can talk to that pilot and gain some knowledge from that system. See how they test that system so that you might apply it down the road to whatever you're going to work on in the future. So it may look like it's just fun and games, but there is a reason behind it.
How many hours do you guys average a year when you're doing the testing?
So for bombers, which is again an outlier, I only got about 60 to 70 hours in a year. But the combo being in the 419th and a B1 isn't a great combo as far as maintenance and all that. But I'd say the 418th is definitely over to 200-ish hours, and a lot. You don't fly a KC-46. You can go down the road and fly C-12.
I think you mentioned you said lack of resources or was it lack of funding at the beginning?
Both, all the time.
So you guys.
They're always like, hey, we want to test this thing. We're behind schedule by 6 months to a year, and we
Okay.
only have this amount of money left. Here you go. And so you got to be creative in the ways that you create tests to gather as much data and glean the best results and conclusions that you can.
Okay.
So that's kind of the minimally resourced, if you will, aspect of it.
Of the 24 people who typically start class, like how many usually make it through? Does most everybody normally make it through? If you guys have anybody drop out of your class?
I will say, before they give their speech, TPS is more of a pump and not a filter. So weapons school, which has a built-in attrition rate, TPS has already spent money to fly out and put you through over 6 months, almost a year sometimes of school.
Okay.
The goal of TPS is not to wash you out. It's definitely a pump. We want to get people through. But it is a lot of work and there is still a standard. So there's a possibility for people to not make it through. But I'd say historically,
1 or 2 per year.
one or two a year. And it's a variety of, pilots or FTEs. It's not really constrained to just one type.
Does the program itself beating them out just because you can't handle it, type of stuff like that?
Cool.
All of the above, probably.
Yeah.
The ones that I've seen, some of them were academic, two of them were airmanship, and one of them was essentially just a general lack of essay, which is needed for flight test.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a pretty good spread.
I would say if you go there and you do the work that is required of you and you pass your academics,
Yeah.
like, you should be good.
Okay.
But there are things like don't do dumb stuff in an aircraft.
Sure.
Kind of stuff that is hanging over your head no matter what, right?
Sure. And then as far as like the school, do you guys like a refresher before you start?
Oh, man.
That would be awesome.
Because I mean, like you go from like your undergrad was like years prior.
There's a program at the National Test Pilot School, which is a civilian one. It claims to prep you for, and he told me about it. Prep you for TPS, $35,000.
Undergrad.
This is mechanical engineering.
Straight. They still do the math test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because for me, when I started, I was so that was a good refresher because all the math I had done was 60 to 1 rule and that was about it. Yeah, the math test is designed in like the first day. I don't know if you actually do next forms, which I've done in forever. But the math test is designed to get you thinking about the math that you will potentially use in TPS. So it's a good refresher there. And then, they do talk about doing literally a class a week, and you do a class a week in TPS. You just don't have the time to go in depth fully into the principles. The point of those classes is to know what you don't know. So, hey, I might not be the best aero guy or compressible aero for supersonic flight or something, but if I'm going to go do something that requires that type of test, I at least have a little bit of the basic knowledge, and I can go back to the academics that I have from TPS and read up on it. That with time management, a lot of TPS is time management because you have a million things to do in 1 year, and being able to parse through what you need to know and what you don't need to know, what's important and what's not important for the specific subject. Test flight is important for flight test because that minimal resources includes people, and there's never enough to accomplish the test that you're trying to do. At least that's what it always seems in flight test roles, or the Air Force in general, really.
Once you are like 418, would they down? It's like
Yeah, so usually when you get to a squadron, after TPS, you'll take a lot of leave that you could and relax, decompress for a few weeks. and then you'll go requal in whatever airplane that you were certified in. If you're a C5 guy, I don't know a whole lot of C5 testing, so you might requal in it, but likely you would go do what's called a SOC course, senior officer course, and go get qualified in the KC-46 or C-17, whatever's coming out the pipeline, or 18. So you get a qualification there, and then after that, usually they try to keep it separate from your other work, but you'll start getting and you'll be what's called a project pilot for one program. At one point, I was the project pilot for 7, maybe 8 different projects. You'd be one of the guys there, so you're gonna get a lot of the test programs. That's what you're doing, but it's in just varying degrees of doneness of a test when you're coming in. You give it just a flight, so you're working off what he planned, what he safety planned, or you can come in and you get this new project and you're working on, ground zero, if you will, of case testing. So complete of the test program, but you're usually juggling 10 different test programs at a time. So we're doing in the V1 Raleigh systems test new software, so regression testing, making sure it still has the same functionality and that has been programmed into the jets. The new functionality still works. You'll do that one day, and then the next day you'll be doing KC-46 handling qualities testing receiver certification. So you're up there trying to chase a boom around to make sure that there's no weird anomalies in the jet wash or anything behind the KC-46. So it kind of goes into, again, time management and juggling all these different subjects, and the curriculum is tailored to. If you don't have that, to develop that fairly quickly within a year. If you have it, to test how good it is, because again, you're always going to be busy.
And do you feel like you said you only fly about 100 hours in a year?
So that was me in the V1. Now that I moved over to TPS, again, you get some pretty cool opportunities. So I fly T-38s primarily, I guess I would say. And then I still fly, I'm attached to the 419, so I'll still fly the V1. So I'm dual qualified in that, and I'm flying the V1 as much as I did before, but now I fly that 38 every day. So like last year, I flew about 200 hours. So there's a lot of opportunities to fly, just not necessarily in bomber land. So I will caveat against that again, that bombers are atypical.
And you guys plan on staying in the test pilot community through the end of your careers, or like what's the plans?
So there's a,
long-term
they actually just changed it. There used to be a 3-year active duty service commitment after you graduate. It's now 5.
Okay.
But generally you would do at least 1 to 2 test tours after you graduate to pay that test. But there's a lot of opportunities that are outside of like the traditional test side of things. Like you can go the command route where you're a test commander kind of deal. But you can also go the material leader route where you use the experience that you gained to become like a program manager or lead an actual acquisition program like that. So there's kind of many hats that you can wear after you graduate.
What do you plan on doing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, unless I plan on staying for 20 years after, so unless I get some shitty assignment where my wife is like, we're getting out, then, I'll probably end up staying. But for me, it's slightly different. Like I'm going to Eglin, I'll probably end up being there for 3 years, and then I think, I don't know how typical it is for you guys, but I was telling you the 40th guys, they usually you're a major by then, and 2 of them are going to Pentagon for staff for 2 years. But it sounds like they get back to flying pretty soon after that. So
yeah, that was a Duke in the slides, but I would say after TPS, depending on where you're at in your career, you'll typically go to your operational test squadron, your operational test tour, if you will. You'll do 2 to 3 years there, wherever it is, whether it's Eglin or Edwards. Those are the 2 big bases for tests. And then at that point, like Chaos was saying, you'll be pretty close to IDE, so getting that taken care of, ACSC. So if you're high performing, whatever they call it now, a real go-getter, you'll go to school after that test tour, and then you'll likely come back to another flying test gig, or go to, like Chaos was saying, the Pentagon, or Right Pad is another AFMC base where they do a lot of SPO jobs. So one level higher than where you're at as far as flight test, where it's a lot more of decision making and obviously not flying, but kind of a staff tour, if you will. But there's a lot of opportunities to come back to fly.
Yeah, I think it's, like talking like at least from my, F-15s, I would like this thing because it's pretty exciting, the stuff that they're working on, at Eglin. I don't know how it is for aircraft, but, they showed me like the new suites that are coming out for the new aircraft, that's like way ahead of what I've flown in the CAF, and it was just cool that they're flying with it and testing it. That's something they're going to deliver to the warfighter, like he was saying before that. And so you make sure that it's good for the pros, essentially, who are going to be flying it in the future. So I think that's really cool.
I personally, I mean, you can call it on the record or off the record or whatever, but me personally, I like the TPS aspect because the engineering is kind of cool. I'd like to use my degree that I got 9 years ago, or 12 years ago now at this point. So being able to apply that and some of the principles to some of the flying that you do is pretty cool. The TPS, like the 1 year to go fly a lot of cool stuff and get literally $1 million education is awesome. But then also for me, after flying with U1 for a while, besides the deployments that were slightly unique, it was all the same after a couple years. So the ability to go do something different and every sortie being different and kind of engage the mind was a big puller for me. So like I said, no sortie that I've flown over in the 419th was the same. I got to fly the first contacts with the KC-46, so that was really pretty cool. And then again, some more B1 specific stuff, but raging around at 200 feet, making sure the terrain following set doesn't fly into the ground is the risk obviously makes it a little bit more exciting as well. So you're not going to do that in the ops world, but in the test world, obviously under some very controlled environment, it's pretty cool. So that's why I did it. The flying, you're not going to get the quantity of it, but for me, it's more about the quality. So the hours that you do get, you're going to have a lot more experiences. And again, I think it's a lot more fun.
Do you guys deploy at all after you go through the school?
You can, but it's a lot less likely. They're not going to, I mean, again, the smart Air Force wouldn't deploy at all because they just spent another $1 million on your education. But there are still people that do deploy out of squadrons, and usually it's not flying gigs. It's usually like KAF tours and stuff like that. Still a possibility, but I don't think it's as probable as if you're in the ops world.
As far as the academic test, you said it was like math. What other categories, I guess, are covered?
But yeah, so that was like the pre-test, if you will, screening, kind of reality check, if you will, that hey, you're going to do some math. But you have like the first class you do is typically like subsonic aero, then you do compressible aero. So that's 1 week, then compressible aero is another week. You'll do energy. You'll do a lot of precursor to flying qualities, which is equations of motion, stability of derivatives, that type of thing. A lot of handling qualities. And then you get into the system stuff, which tabs here could talk to a lot, but like EW, radar theory, if you will, stuff like that. It's kind of the schmattering. But yeah, roughly once a week for the first semester, I'd say maybe even a month into your second semester is basically a test every Friday.
And how much of that is class time a day? I know you said you expect to do that.
Yeah,
12
so-
days, but-
Yeah, so typically the way the schedule will work out, the juniors will be in the will be in the morning for flying with their academics in the afternoon, and then it swaps for the seniors. So the seniors have academics in the morning and fly in the afternoon. And it's usually about 3 hours of like getting lecture time per day. So typically 2 to 5 o'clock for the juniors. They have class, and then the first lines brief, if you will, at about 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. So we have about 5, 6, 7 hours of flying opportunity. Obviously, you're not going to fly the whole time, but you'll get the 3 or 4 hours you need for T-38 brief, fly, and debrief with some wiggle room depending on how the goes line up. But you'll have 3 hours of lecture pretty much every day for the whole year, I'd say. Maybe towards the end, it slacks off a little bit, but you guys can probably talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of material, that you're doing. And like I was mechanical engineering also, and I have a master's, and I felt definitely challenged in the first few weeks, especially getting into that, because it's not like, for example, pilot training. I found the test like very easy because it's just memorizing things, right? You guys know, just memorize the textbook and you're set. But here, like it's common college where like you have to work on problems, and really think about the answers you're making. And so just memorizing things doesn't work. You have to understand the concepts, which is really, it takes time. You have to do the homework, like you really have to work at it. And that's the other thing, the homework, like usually like, you have the 3 hours of academics, you get home and you're doing homework for 2 to 3 hours in those days. So, and some homework you don't have to hang in, but if you don't do it, you're gonna probably fail the test. Yeah. Like, it's really like engineering classes, like if you remember from college, that's kind of how it is. So, but you do learn a lot though, I'll say that, and if you're smart, you use people in your class that know more than you, like this guy, I just like explain this to me, man, and you can grab an understanding of it.
How many times a week did you guys fly on average?
2 to 3, I think, during the academics. Yeah, 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's bare bones average there. And you fly a little bit more initially because you have to get qualled in your what they call a crew solo aircraft. And everybody gets qualled in a T-38, and then it's C-12 or F-16. That's like 8 flights right there. So you have to get through that as soon as possible so you can continue flying, later on. So the first weeks are maybe a little bit more heavy, but kind of stabilize later on.
In the T-38, there's a decent amount of what we call crew solo. So pilots will be in the front, and then we'll have an FTE in the back. You go out and collect data, whether it be for performance or line qualities / handling qualities, and you'll go out and grab data so you can write a report. It's pretty unique as well, the TPS. You get a few rides, get checked out into solo, and then you take FTEs who have potentially only flown a couple times ever out with you, and you're collecting data to go write a report. So it's kind of unique, if you will, with TPS.
You guys just work together on writing those reports?
Yeah, it depends on some are like, there are some reports that are like groups of 2, but they're shorter reports. Like the report for the C5 we're gonna write, it's just 2 of us also, because we're only here, right? So, and then like the test management project, we have a group of 5, so we're all working on that right now. We have much more time to do that, as opposed to, I think this is like 2 weeks after we're done here, something like that. So, yeah.
I talked to Chris Johnson too. He's a C5 guy that's almost done. He's in you guys' class.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the next couple months, so he can potentially give you the C5 perspective.
Yeah.
Like I said, TPS is often referred to as the best year that you never want to do again. So it's a lot of work, but there's a lot of cool opportunities that you can go do. So
Yeah, just be ready to work
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Clear your schedule.
But don't get me wrong, like you hate to work, but you're glad to do it at the end. You learn a lot. So it's like, oh, I did it. Yeah, it sucked at the time, but it's whatever,
Do any of you guys have families and kids or anything? People in your class?
Yeah, if you have had kids in our class during TPS, which like good on them, but it's just me and my wife, just the 2 of us. So she just did to give you a reality check, like she's like, it's almost as if you were deployed. Like that's what she said. That's what it feels like. Because I get home, I do my I say hi. I'm like, what's up? And I go do my homework and then I go to bed. So and then on the weekends, there are some weekends where we can take the Saturday off and go somewhere. That happens, but not often. A lot of times you have to hang around and.
That's another TPS slogan.
Yeah.
Weekends are for grads.
Yeah, weekends are for grads. Yeah. So it's busy, right? So I know. My wife, when she hangs out with the other spouses, she says that all they talk about is they complain about how we don't have any time. So that's just, I mean, that's the reality of it. They I don't know, we knew it was going to be like.
Other end, I'm sure you guys have some crazy hours, right? Like you're tonight we're flying TPS or post TPS. TPS doesn't for sure fly at night, but post TPS night flights are not nearly as common, or at least is what it feels like. So I would say active GPS was much more of a 9 to 5 set schedule than what you might be getting now. So
your schedule is much more normalized now outside of
yeah,
school.
which is nice because it's a similar, I'm sure for you guys, like it was for me to be one, but you fly potentially at like 11 o'clock takeoff at night or whatever, be done at 1 or 2, debrief, and then you could have like top 3 the next day, like 5 hours later, because they didn't care about your crew rest. It is very much not like that. Like it is, again, pretty gentlemanly. It's, you still got early shows sometimes to go fly, but when you're done flying, you can go home and you're not going to TTY a whole lot. It's much more, I think, family friendly, obviously post GPS.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
I don't know if you guys have any more questions. Yeah, I'm not saying it's anything scary, it's just, like you're ready to work, but it's, I'm glad I done it.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
As long as you can still say that at the end of the day.
Yeah, then, good.
Still gotta graduate.
Yeah, that's true, that's the other thing, we still got 2 months left, so,
Sure.
a lot of things can go wrong between here. But, you get to play a C5 today, and
Yeah, there you go. I'll get that other headset for you guys.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
I needed it. Let me just grab this computer.
How'd the sim go yesterday?
Good, fun, man. Yeah, it was good to check it out and, see how we did our trend class. It's cool. How long have you been here?
I've been here almost 10 months.